in a series called Who's Your One, and we're going to do a little bit of dreaming today. The mission of our church is to help everybody, no matter who they are or where they are, or what's going on in their life, to take a step closer to Jesus. And I think that there's this fascination, to, at least for me, to think about what a person's life could be like if they did move closer to Jesus, to be able to use a little Holy Spirit-inspired imagination to think about what could be different in my life and in the lives of the people that I love and care about. What would be different? What would be substantially different? I know this is going to seem like a little bit out of left field and probably will age me for sure to some degree, but how many of you remember the members-only jacket? How many of you owned a members-only jacket? How many of you still own a members-only jacket? I actually looked for one at the thrift store this week, and I couldn't find one. I guess they're hard to come by anymore. Now, if you're too young to remember what this is really just a pretty basic jacket that says members only on it. It's not that exciting. But it was very popular starting in 1980, and the reason it was very popular is because it had an air of exclusivity to it. Oh, you're a member only? A member of what? I don't know, but I got the jacket. I'm pretty happy about that. And the irony of it is that it wasn't exclusive at all. Anybody could buy one, and it was a relatively cheap jacket, and that's probably why it faded in popularity. It was inspired by a country club sign that it's here only people who are members can come in, only people who are members can participate here. Now, I think there's something important to consider when we think about what it means to be an insider and to identify ourselves as a member versus outsiders, because we do live in a culture that wants to distinguish the inside from the outside, but the church is supposed to be an organization that is completely different. William Temple, the Archbishop of Canterbury, said that the church is the only organization that exists solely for the benefit of its non-members. Now, you might take a little issue with some of the nuances of that statement, but there's something that I think he's trying to get at that we forget, that it's not simply about us in the room. We don't make decisions just considering who's here. We think about, we prepare for people who have never even walked in the door yet. We value people who have never driven in the parking lot yet. Acts chapter 15, verse 19 is this fledgling church is trying to figure out what it's going to be like and how it's going to have an impact in the world. One of the leaders of the church stood up and said, "It is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles." These are non-Jewish people. These are not members. The members-only people all had the right jacket on, and they all knew exactly what they were supposed to do and how they were supposed to act and what they were supposed to say. And somebody said, "Hey, actually, it's not just about us. We should not make it difficult for people who are trying to find God." So we have to care about people who aren't even in the room yet. And I know a lot of you do. You have friends, family, neighbors, loved ones that you deeply care about and you want to see take their next step closer to Jesus. And that's what this whole series has been about. And you didn't need a series to remind you of that. You've been thinking about that person. You've been praying for them. But we are partnering with you in thinking about them and praying for them. In fact, in the fellowship hall on that wall that was built, on one side of it is our small group info and a map of where you can find different small groups. And on the back side, you can still add people's names, and we will still be praying for them. There's 60 plus names on there that we are praying for, that God would draw them closer to Jesus. And potentially he will use an opportunity like Friend Sunday next week to do that. I know we got a couple people who are very excited about Friend Sunday, Rachel in particular. She hasn't stopped talking about Friend Sunday. That's right. We need a flag for Rachel. I'm fascinated by the idea that massive change can hinge on a minor interaction. There's a 90s movie that I feel like maybe it was one of those Mandela effects. Like, did this movie really happen? Did it really exist? But it was called, let me not give you too much detail. How many of you have ever heard, it came out right early 90s, a movie called Sliding Doors? Okay. There's like 5 of us that have, okay, if you've seen it, prove it. Who is the main actress in the movie? Oh, okay, all right, we got some smart people here. You're quick with your phones. Yeah, it was this movie that just like showed up, and I thought it was pretty fascinating because the whole premise of the movie is that Gwyneth Paltrow, in one scene, gets on the subway and her life turns out one way. In another scene, she misses the same subway and her life turns out a different way. And there's been other movies that have that sort of premise, kind of like It's a Wonderful Life. What if our life? What if things were different? What if? And I find that concept fascinating because it makes me wonder, is life like that to some degree? Are there these massive changes in trajectory of a person's life that hinge on relatively minor moments? I don't know how many of you know this yet, but my son has broken his arm a total of 5 times. Most recently, this last Tuesday at football practice. Now, some of you are like, what's going on, Patrick? Are you getting things checked out? And we've asked every doctor, every time. The doctor just most recently said, yeah, it's a medical condition. We call it, in the medical world, we call it being unlucky. That's what we call it. So he's unlucky. Number 5. That's pretty wild. But here's the thing. There's this little moment where things could have gone very differently. Before we went to practice, between when I pick him up for school and when I drop him off for practice, there's about 40 minutes. And he could not find his mouth guard. The mouth guard is required to physically participate in practice. So he was not going to be allowed to physically participate in practice. He would have to stand on the sidelines and call out plays or learn plays. He wasn't going to be able to be tackled or tackle anybody if he didn't find his mouth guard. So we frantically spent about 30 minutes searching for the mouth guard. We couldn't find it. Right before we were about to leave, it popped into his brain, oh, wait a second, I know where it was. It had fallen into this crevice, and he found it, and he got his mouth guard. He went to practice, first tackle practice, got tackled, big kid, landed on his arm just right, broke his arm. If we hadn't found the mouth guard, no practice, no broken arm. It feels like this relatively major event hinges on this relatively minor circumstance. And is life like that? And does it work that way? One of our elders, you could ask him about this, he's out of town this week, but he told me that he got into his psychology degree at college. He chose that degree because it was the shortest line at college to sign up for classes. And he is still working in that industry. Can you think of things like that in your life? Where something relatively minor has had this major impact? You were going to go to college A, but then you ended up going to college B at the last minute. Or maybe you got a job offer, and there was one job in Iowa and one job in Minnesota, and you're like, well, I'm not moving to Iowa. Minnesota it is. And there's these relatively minor things, these minor issues that take you different places and change the trajectory of your lives, these what-ifs. And my question is, how do what-ifs interact with our faith? Because even in the Bible, you can find these relatively minor what-ifs. For example, those of you that know the story of Zacchaeus, he's a tax collector, very disliked, on the wrong side of the religious world. He knows Jesus is coming into town. He climbs a tree to see Jesus, gets Jesus' attention. What if Zacchaeus didn't climb the tree? What if? What if the woman at the well just wasn't thirsty that day, didn't need water that day, and didn't happen to meet Jesus and have this conversation that changed her life? What if Lydia, we talked about this story a few weeks ago, hadn't gone down to the river to pray and met Paul and changed the trajectory of her life? What if Paul hadn't got arrested and hadn't been worshiping in prison and there hadn't been an earthquake and he hadn't told the jailer, don't hurt yourself, we're all still here? The story we talked about last week. What if? Now, to be clear, I do not think our faith is that fragile. I don't think God is up there saying, like, I gave you one chance, you missed it, now you're out forever. I don't think that's true. I think God offers endless opportunities for us to find him, to take steps closer to him. It only feels like chance because that's the one time we actually responded to what God was trying to get us to do. In fact, in Paul's story, in his conversion story, as he recounts it, there's this amazing line that he gives. He's recounting what happened to him on his way to persecute Christians in Damascus. And there's that moment where he experiences the presence of Jesus, and Jesus tells him, hey, Paul, why are you persecuting me? It's hard for you to kick against the goads. And what he means is Paul, I have been prodding you to make some changes, and you're not paying attention, man. This was like the last-ditch effort. I've just got to show up and talk to you. I've given you chance after chance. You're a hard man to get a hold of. You've been fighting it. But here's why I bring up these what ifs. Because sometimes you get to see a sliding door moment in someone else's life. There's somebody that you've been interacting with, and you can see the trajectory of their life is not going a good direction. Their marriage is not going in a healthy direction. Their parenting, their job, their choices, they're making bad self-destructive choices, and you can see this, and you want change for them. You want them to step closer to Jesus, and then something happens, something shakes them, something changes them, and you can see the trajectory of their life going in a different direction. That's pretty incredible, and sometimes we get to be part of those moments. The what if, the sliding doors moments for our one, for the person that we've been thinking about and praying about and caring about. What I want to accomplish today is just to be brutally practical about this. Not that you have to invite your one to Friend Sunday, but it's a great opportunity to get them in, say, yeah, my church is doing this thing, and I'd love to have you come. If I don't show up with a friend, people are going to judge me. We won't, I promise. But just bring a friend. We're going to feed them. We're going to talk about the gospel. We're going to try to do a good job of welcoming them and loving them. And it could be an opportunity to lower the bar for a person who hasn't been to church in a while, who hasn't been around Christians in a while. So we're going to try to do that. And you don't have to invite that person. I think it's a good opportunity to do that. But I want to address some of the objections and excuses and mental blocks that we've had to interacting with those people in a way that might help them take a step toward Jesus. And maybe to show us that it's doable. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone's relationship is different. The people that you have in your life, that you know them better than I know them. But I think that there's some things that are pretty universal to all of us. All right, everybody's one, I think, has been identified. Hopefully you put it on the wall. We've been praying for that person. So what are some things that we can do? What are some things that we can do? Number one thing that you need to do as you interact with your one to help them take a step closer to Jesus is release the pressure. Take a deep breath and relax. It's so important for you that this person find their way to God. It matters so much. It's such a big deal. That you want this to happen to such a degree that it gets you all wound up. And I'm just telling you, you just need to relax and release the pressure. Sports psychologists say that the one thing that distinguishes good athletes from great athletes isn't necessarily skill or practice or build or opportunity or any of that stuff. There are just some people that when the moment gets real big, like if the game is on the line and they have to shoot 2 free throws and make them to win the game, there are some people who stand there at the free throw line, and by the way, I would be one of these people, and the moment would get to me. I'd be like, oh no, everything rides on this moment. My legacy rides on this moment. The crowd, I would notice the crowd. My heart rate would elevate in this thing that I had done millions of times. I would forget how to do in the moment because it would feel too big for me. But then there are other people, it's just another shot. Doesn't matter. They can tune it all out. They got ice in their veins. So in my case, that voice gets in my head, whatever you do, Patrick, don't mess up. And of course, I would mess up. That's the only reason I'm not a professional athlete. That's it. Other than that. Something similar can happen with your one. Like, for example, if you have a coworker and they ask you about church or Christianity and you're like, uh-oh, this is it. This is my Super Bowl. This is the moment. I got to say the right thing. This might be my only chance. If I mess up, they'll hate Jesus. They'll hate church. And the voice in your head says, whatever you do, don't mess up. And the moment feels too big and you say something wrong or you don't know what to say or you freeze up or you change the subject. It's hard. It's a big deal. The great theologian Steve Countryman this is the only thing you're going to remember from this sermon. Anyway, Steve once said, we're not actually trying to get them to go the whole mile, just the next step. And he used the illustration, if someone is at a -10 in their relationship with Jesus, even getting them to a -8 is an improvement. because they've inched closer, and that's all we're trying to do. And it's not even on us. We're just the one that God uses to facilitate that moment. It's not on you. When we tell ourselves it's all on us, that we have to hit the grand slam, it's too much pressure. It scares us. And by the way, it scares them. Have you ever had an interaction with somebody, and maybe you've done this, where you're like, I got to say the right thing, and you have some sort of small talk, and, oh, great weather we're having. Yeah, you know who controls the weather? Jesus. And you know where it's going to be really hot? Not, it's just like you get all turned around. Paul acknowledged this fact that we should just relax because it's not on us, and we end up saying the wrong thing when we put too much pressure on ourselves. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and 7, when he talked about his dynamic with another evangelist, he says, I planted the seed, Apollos. This is just some different guy whose story we don't get much detail about. Apollos watered it, but God's been making it grow. God's the one making it grow. Listen what he says. Neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything. That's you. You are the nothing in that scenario. That's us. It's not on us. God uses you to facilitate the moment, but it's not on you. It's God. It's only God who makes things grow. Some of you are like, yeah, but in the Bible, like, it really matters. Yeah, urgent, never forced. Urgent, never forced. Just release that pressure. Number two, watch for signals. Watch for signals. Some people hate small talk. Hate it. I knew my wife would be one of those people that hates it. That's the one who just said amen in a public room full of people. But I actually think small talk's underrated, by the way. I think it's underrated. It's great. I can have the same conversation with like 15 people, and I can adjust my conversation as it goes. We're talking about the weather, and I can make some observation about the weather, and oh, that really got a good reaction from this person, so now over here I can get the same. It's like I get to work my material with a bunch of different people just with small talk. I think small talk's great. In fact, without small talk, you would freak people out. Imagine you go up to a stranger, most of you wouldn't do that, but you're standing in line, or you're at school, some school function with somebody you barely know, and you're like, yeah, things aren't really very good between me and my spouse right now. They'd be like, okay, I'm going to go somewhere else. Oh, I've had this weird rash for like a week. No, you got to start with small talk. You got to build up a little bit. And some of you are like, well, how about no talk? Forget small talk, no talk. The no talk person is weird too. Have you ever stood next to a no-talk person and you tried some small talk and they didn't respond with any talk, and you're like, okay, that's weird. You're strange. I don't know what to do. Small talk, it's this on-ramp. It's this on-ramp for genuine interactions. They may not be genuine, but it's a chance to feel things out and get to know the situation a little bit. This happened to me earlier this week. Somebody I'm acquainted with. I said, hey, how are you doing? And they said, fine. And then they kind of spun on their heels and they said, actually, that's not true. I'm not doing fine. I'm kind of having a tough week. And there was this moment of genuine honesty where we could have a real interaction. Now, I could have said, well, I don't want to hear about that. But I said, tell me more. I want to hear what's going on. Give me some more information. I think those little moments of genuine honesty, even when it's in small talk, are green lights. It's an invitation just to go a little bit deeper, not to get weird, not to overdo it, but just to dig a little deeper. Ask the deeper question. Now, some of you are thinking, well, the person with whom I want to have influence, it's not an acquaintance. I know them well. We're way past small talk. But there are still green lights to watch for in your connection with them. Most of the time, my kids, you don't have to have small talk with your kids, right? You rarely do. You don't have to be like, boy, it's hot out here today, huh, Liam? Liam loves to make fun of me because he uses this line a lot, because evidently I use it a lot. And it's not the heat that'll get you, it's the humidity. And I don't know if I use that with him or what, but he just loves to pretend he's like a middle-aged man. It's not the heat that'll get you. Just imagine him doing that. With your kids, you don't need to have small talk. And so sometimes, I'd pick them up from school and they'd get in the car. 99.999% of the time, I would say, hey, how did school go? And they said, Yeah, and not even with that much enthusiasm. That was kind of overdoing it. They said fine in a way that told me, please do not speak another word while we drive from the school to home. Fine. I'm trying not to encourage a conversation. But every once in a while, they would say something, or there would be a different spark, or they would bring something up. You know what that is? Green light. Tell me about that. How's that going? What's going on? Now, Luke chapter 19, I think this is pretty interesting. Luke chapter 19, this story of Zacchaeus, we've referenced it. Steve referenced it in the first sermon. It's this pretty interesting interaction that Jesus has with a stranger, by the way. Jesus didn't know Zacchaeus before this interaction. So there's this huge crowd, and Jesus picks Zacchaeus to go to his house out of this huge crowd. Why did Jesus zero in on Zacchaeus? Why did he pick Zacchaeus out of everybody that was gathered along the streets that day? Why do you think that is? Zacchaeus was in a tree, is why that was. Jesus is looking at this guy saying, hey, this guy is especially interested. He really wants to know. He really wants to see. That is a green light. That is an opportunity for me to connect a little bit deeper with this person. Jesus reached the spot. He looked up. He said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. We got to go to your house and have dinner. We need to talk about what it is that drove you to climb the tree just so you could catch a glimpse of me. I think there are red lights too, and this is important, church, because this is where we really get messed up. The New Testament uses a phrase repeatedly. The phrase is, wipe the dust off your feet. And that phrase comes from there had been an interaction, and it was a clear red light, and Jesus and the apostles would say, okay, it is time to move on. Now, this might have been a testimony to them, but it was a red light, and they said, I will respect your red light, and I will move on with my life. And this is where I think a lot of us Christians get stuck, because we feel like, well, that didn't go so well. I have to tell them about Jesus. I have to interact with them in a way that helps them step closer to Jesus, so I am not going to respect the boundaries that they have placed on this interaction, this relationship. And you know what that does when you ignore the red lights that the people are giving you? It pushes them further away. Let God do the work and create the opportunities for you to have those interactions with him. When you don't respect the thanks but no thanks, you're telling them, I don't actually care about you. I care more about what I have to say to you. At least that's what you're communicating to them. So here's some green lights to look for in your relationships. Green lights to look for. Anytime anyone identifies or shares a struggle, actually, things are not going great right now. Tell me more. I want to hear more. Can I pray with you? Why is that? Anytime anybody is having a celebration, yeah, we just bought a house. My kid just got into college. My spouse just got a promotion. Oh, that's so awesome. Let's celebrate. That's great. That's wonderful. Tell me more about how that's going to affect your life. That's a green light. Anytime anybody gives you sort of an identity statement. Some of you have had conversations with people and you're like, hey, you should come to my church sometime. And they say, I'm just not the church going type. Oh, well, tell me more about that. Interact with them. Just tell me more. Each of those is a chance to be genuinely curious. Remember, like we talked last week, to be for their good. All right, number 3, the final strategy, set the table. Set the table. Do any of you have any unwritten strategies for how you navigate daily life? You don't write this down, but you just make choices this way. On road trips, I try my hardest, never, ever, ever to stop for a bathroom break at a gas station that is on the left side of the highway. I only stop on right side of the highways. Does anybody know why this is? It's easier to get back on the highway. So if my kids are like, Dad, I'm about to explode, well, I'm sorry, it's on the left. Next rest stop is in 61 miles. You're just going to have to hold it. I always take the lane at the stoplight that has the fewest cars. Always. Now, some of you are like, well, yeah, of course. Even if I have to get back in the left lane and like exit onto a highway or something in like 50 feet, I will still take that lane and I will be like Mario Andretti at the stoplight. Is Mario Andretti, is that a race car guy? It sounds like it should be. Anyway, like I'm just ready to go and get in front of them. I always do that. And when I'm a passenger with someone who gets in the longer line, I'm like, whoa, this person doesn't know how to drive. They don't know what they're doing. If I haven't done this for about 20 years, I just want all of you to know, okay? But this is a strategy. If you can't get off the phone with someone, if you've given them all the indications, like, well, it's been good talking to you, and they just keep going and going and going, the way to get off the phone without being rude, well, this is rude, but they don't know you're being rude, is to hang up on them while you're talking. And then when they text or call, I guess we got cut off. Well, too bad, got to go, Don't do that because it feels like it's wrong, and it probably is. I haven't done that for a long time. I was just in a desperate situation one time, and I could not get off the phone with this guy, and this genius idea came to me. Last strategy, and I don't think about this, but like my wife has noticed it, and I've noticed it with other, especially, I don't know if this is predominantly male, but anybody out here relate to this? When I'm in a public place, particularly when I'm out to eat, for some reason, I have to sit where I can see the entryway. I cannot sit with my back to the door. Has anybody else got this? Right. Ethan Hunt, Mission Impossible, something's going to go down, and I just have to be prepared for it. But it just makes me uncomfortable. So if we go in a restaurant and somebody takes the seat that I want, and I have to sit with my back to the door, I'm just like antsy the whole time. I never wrote this down. This isn't a life rule. It's just the strategies with which I navigate everyday life. So here's a strategy to navigate these interactions with one. By the way, Paul had a strategy. Did you know that? We've read that several times. Paul would always go into a new town, and the first place he would go was to the synagogue. Here's some God-worshiping people. I'm going to start my evangelism process with them. And remember, does anybody remember, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, when a city had no synagogue, then where would he go? Down to the river, where Jewish God followers would go to pray. And he would go, that was his strategy. Let's find people who are already following God, and then I'm going to tell them about Jesus. Jesus had a strategy. Did you know that? This is pretty amazing. He seems to have a strategy. He never outlines it. But Jesus, especially in the Gospel of Luke, highlights this to an amazing degree. Jesus is always on his way to a meal, at a meal, or has just left a meal throughout the Gospel of Luke. And really all the Gospels, but it really highlights it in Luke. The majority, if you read through the Gospels, the vast majority of Jesus' interactions with lost people were at a table. Why is that? Why is that? Well, food puts people in a good mood. Maybe that's it. If you're going to share some hard truths, you might as well feed them first, or you be eating something. But the table is welcoming. One of the things that the Gospels highlight so clearly is that the table sort of like puts everybody at the same level. Like people that aren't supposed to be included are included. There's no members only here. And Jesus was very clear about that. That people, the outcasts, the marginalized, let's gather them in. Let's have a banquet with all of them. So a table was very welcoming. But a table is also opportunity. It's opportunity to have conversations, to hear from people, to interact with people. Notice, Jesus doesn't talk to Zacchaeus in the tree. He doesn't say, well, let's talk about what it means to follow God better. He says, let's go to your house and let's have a meal. We've been praying for your one. If you wrote the name down, we've been praying even if you didn't write the name down. And prayer is absolutely essential. But if we're not careful, prayer can be a way that we create a buffer between our one and actually doing anything, interacting with them in any way. I don't want to talk to them about Jesus, so I'll pray for them and hope something happens. But here's my question for us. What could the trajectory of their lives be like if you did something? What might happen if you invited them to church? What might happen? Well, they might say no. They might not. What would happen if you had a conversation about faith? What would happen if you showed genuine curiosity in your life, in their life, and not just looking for ways to interject God or Jesus? What would happen if you invited them for a meal? What would happen if they showed up for Friends Sunday? What would happen? What could change? Not, and this is so important to me, and this is the thing that really gives me hope and encouragement when I think about the trajectory of somebody's life, is it's not just them. It's not just their direction in life. It's the people around them. What changes at their workplace when they turn their lives around and start following Jesus? What changes in their marriage? What changes in their parenting and their kids? What are the ripple effects that can spread not just to their kids, but their grandkids and great-grandkids? What if you were willing to allow, you're nothing, remember 1 Corinthians, this is God granting the increase, but what if you allowed God to use you to draw that